2-minute warning, everybody. We're just waiting for some technical issues to be sorted out, I believe that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting to order, please, and do the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we're on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And I'll ask for 30 seconds of silent reflection. I tend to take a bit more time because apparently I'm told I have a lot to reflect on. So if you'll join me and for the national anthem. At this time, I'd like to ask His Worship for some words on Remembrance Day.
Thank you very much, Chair Hakey. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the armistice was signed to complete what was meant to be the war to end all wars. Some 20 years later, World War II broke out, and 5 years after that concluded, the Korean War began. In 2001, Canada joined the war in Afghanistan. 3 people from Peterborough region made the supreme sacrifice in Afghanistan: Nick Bulger, Randy Payne, and Michael Freeman. I had the distinct honor to attend all 3 of those funerals of those very brave individuals. Canadian forces have also been involved in peacekeeping operations over many decades. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, November the 11th, we'll gather across the street as a community to pay our respects, to reflect, and to remember all those who served this great country. We will hold a ceremony at the Cenotaph in Confederation Park, which is one of the most remarkable cenotaphs in Canada today. The architect, Walter Allward, was the same individual who designed the Vimy Ridge Memorial. Over the years, through the great work of David Edgerton and others, we were to establish the Veterans Wall of Honor. Each one of the names on that wall has a story behind it. On behalf of my colleagues on Peterborough City Council, I encourage all citizens of Peterborough to join us tomorrow around 10:30 a.m. as we remember those names and all those who fought to protect our freedoms we enjoy today, lest we forget. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The Council for the City of Peterborough recognizes the principles contained in our Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Mr. Clerk, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
Mr. Chair, I see none at this time.
Thank you very much. We will go to consent items. Anybody wishing to speak to 11A? Oh, my apologies. Yes, adoption of minutes. I need a mover for October 6th meeting as worship, and we will vote on 7A. Councillor Duguay is a yes. And that carries. Thank you. And Natalie, my apologies. I'm so excited about chairing this meeting. I forgot I'll leave out occasional things like budget items. We'll go to consent items. Anybody wishing to speak to 11A? 11A. 11B. Councillor Duguay. 11C. Nobody on 11C? Oh, sorry. Again, Councillor Duguay. Thank you. Your hand has to go up when I ask. Thank you. 11D. Nothing on 11D. 11E. Councillor Burke. 12A. Nobody on 12A. Oh, that's tonight. We could get rid of it now. No, I'm kidding. So up for consent are 11A and D. Oh, yes. Councillor, thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Parnell. And we'll go to a vote. Oh, we did sneak 12 in there. We'll have to take 12 out, Natalie. That was me again. We're just waiting for that to be adjusted. You're taking out 12A. Removing 12A. Oh. Okay with that. Okay. We'll move it as 11A and 11D then. Excuse the 12D. Pretend it's not there. Councillor Duguay is a yes. Yay. And that carries. Now we will get to the presentations and Ms. Snott, I believe you are up. Actions to date towards truth and reconciliation. And I believe you have a handout for us, is that correct? Thank you. Thank you very much, Shelley, and welcome.
Miigwech. Bonjour, Anin, Sego, Weche. Shelly Not, Nishna Bakwa, Curve Lake, Burley Falls, Adonjaba. Good afternoon, everybody. So I just want to start off by stating that when I say bonjour, Anin, Sego, Weche, I'm actually saying hello and acknowledging my brothers and sisters, my Ojibwe, my OG Cree, my Haudenosaunee, my Mohawks. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce my Anishinaabe name. So my Anishinaabe name is the star closest to the universe. And I'm part of the Kingfisher clan. As Indigenous people, we have our own clans and we have our own roles and responsibilities. And because of that responsibility as a Kingfisher, it's about learning and taking information back to our people. So I feel it's a perfect balance with my position here at the city. With everything that I do is always our foundation of our work. So I'm going to start off by offering a gift. Back to your way of maybe going to another individual and asking them to be able to present that tobacco. So that's truly our foundation of our work for the city, is really learning that opportunity of the teachings of Indigenous people, because that truly is putting us on our next step. As an Indigenous person, I'm always using that 2I seeing approach. That approach is a guiding principle for bringing our Indigenous and our Western ways of knowledge together as one. And in this role, it's important that I always look at things through that. It was actually this wonderful elder, Albert Marshall, from a Mi'kmaq nation, that came up with this methodology of understanding that it's important for us to learn to use that I within the strengths of our Indigenous knowledges and the ways of knowing. And from the other I, It's using the strengths of that Western knowledge, and using both of these eyes together will always benefit for all, as long as I'm always looking through those two lenses. And by looking through those two lenses is a way of blending the Western and the First Nations together as one. When we look at it, some of the examples with this two-eye seeing approach is really looking at how Indigenous people view things and how Western is viewed and how we can balance the two together. If we look at that Indigenous view, that holistic understanding of relationships and how it's so important and how that's viewed through the Indigenous way of being of life. If we look through it through that Western eye, it's very scientific, analytical, evidence-based approach. But how we can blend those two together, we're able to balance that understanding that respects both that cultural wisdom and that scientific method and blending it together. It's like our knowledge being passed through our oral traditions, and our stories is so important through the Indigenous culture. It's honoring and respecting our elders and our land-based learning, how important it is for us to connect to Mother Earth herself. When we look through that same lens, through that Western eye, it's all through our academic research and that data and that technology. Having that blending of the two truly brings it upon that cultural, informed, evidence-based decision making by balancing the two, by looking through it by both lenses. When we look at the Indigenous way of being, we always emphasize on that interconnection and our responsibility, because each and every one of us have our responsibilities. Through that Western eye, it's emphasis on the objective and the initiation. But if we put it together, when we put it together, those solutions that are ethical, inclusive, and sustainable. So by taking that moment, just looking back and ensuring that we're looking through that Indigenous eyes, through that Western eyes, and how we can blend them together to move forward together as one. When we look at the Indigenous relations, what work has been done to date? What have I accomplished in the whole year I've been here? It's hard to believe it's already 1 year, right? Seems like I just got hired, but it has been 1 year. So what have I been working on? The first thing and the most important thing for us as a city is to build that strong relations. By having those relationships, it's going to build trust. It's going to build trust. It's going to bring and have open communications, and we can work together and walk side by side. But we understand that there has been so much history. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to truly build those relationships. By doing this, I've worked with building relationships with our local First Nations, our leaders, and the urban Indigenous community. You see, here in the city of Peterborough, we're very fortunate. We have a lot of Indigenous people that live within the city. Yes, we have lots that come from those 7 communities, from Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog, Georgina Island, Wolseley, and Rama. But we also have a lot of other Indigenous people that are moving to the city for employment opportunities or educational resources. Trent University, Sir Sanford Fleming. Lots of times these students are coming in, they're doing their education, and they're staying, and they're making the city of Peterborough their home. So when we talk about our First Nations, we have to understand with the Williams Treaty, the 7 First Nation communities that we need to build relationships with. But it's also very important that we build those relationships with the urban Indigenous communities. And those would be the communities under the Friendship Centers, under Ontario Native Women's Association, and of course, our brothers and sisters from Métis Nation. During my time, I was able to bring together those Indigenous agencies, and we created and established the Urban Indigenous Working Group. Even though we hadn't worked together very long, we came together and we hosted that beautiful Every Child Matters event up at the hill by the library. For people that might not have been able to attend, it was absolutely warmed my spirit at 6:30 in the morning to see all those cars driving up the hill. You see, the first sunrise ceremony I tried to do here in the community, I only had about 15 people. but we had 180 people show up for sunrise ceremony. When we met as a group, we talked about, we figured that we had over 800 participants come up to that hill within a 4-hour period to show their love and their support. It was beautiful. The beautiful thing about that Indigenous working group is we're all coming together for the right reasons from our heart. That, and Veronica, you're going to be talking about budgets, but I got to tell you something. That event, nobody had a big budget. We gave what we could. And we didn't shame anyone if they didn't have the money, but it was so successful because of the hard work. That's where it came from, the heart. And we made do. And we had a lot of wonderful support from the city, businesses that came forth and donated to us and other agencies. So that's what made it so successful. Establishing these connections with all 7 Williams Tree First Nations, because every First Nation is building. They're growing their consultation teams as well. And it took a year. It took a year, but I can at least say I've had every First Nation at least at the table once with us. But the more we build those relationships, the easier they're going to come. Education, training, and awareness. In the report that I provided, one of the things I spoke about was the Indigenous cultural competency training and how important this training is for council, for you all, and for staff and for community. One of the asks that I talk about is my goal. My goal is in 2026, this time next year, because it's going to fly right by, is we have 100% completion of ensuring that all the staff and council have an opportunity to have the Indigenous cultural competence and training. You see, that training isn't just going to be myself developing that curriculum, because as an Indigenous person, I cannot speak for 7 First Nations. I don't speak for every Indigenous person, but I bring my knowledge forth and figure out ways of doing things in a good way. So when that training is going to be developed in the first quarter of the new year, we really be looking at the expertise of bringing an elder in to work with me and looking at bringing in also an Indigenous consultant to create that curriculum together, because that's what we do. It's not always on one, it's a group. And from there, we're going to go out to those First Nations, because one of the things that we've learned, and we will often hear over and over, nothing about us without us. So it means they want their voice to be heard, even if it's something simple as going through and showing them the training that we like to deliver so they have their input to say, hey, you know what? I think this part is really important. The history of the Williams Treaty. Maybe this part is really important. So it's providing that opportunity. I continue to offer briefing to our wonderful SLT team on important time-sensitive Indigenous issues as they rise, whether it's at the community, provincial, or federal level. I've already spoke about the Every Child Matters, but that memorial that was out front. When I first came in, one of the things was I did go to the Indigenous community and say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Those shoes cannot stay out on the step. It's time for them to be rested. And with that, I was giving guidance to do it in a good way by smudging that area and taking that tobacco. And I took it to a sacred fire and I put in the prayers for all those children that never came home and for those survivors that continue to suffer every day. I also prayed for the people that laid those shoes down there for their healing journey, whatever that may look like. All the rocks that were placed there went back to Mother Earth, where they belong. Those shoes we put away. We put away and we looked after those shoes. And at the event, at the Every Child Matters, we provided an opportunity for community to come and look at those shoes and paint the bottoms. They painted the bottoms of the shoes and they stamped those shoes on a beautiful canvas that we will always continue to remember. Because as a city, we know that those children will never be forgotten. The beautiful thing about giving those shoes to the communities, we roundabout gave it back to them, the responsibility back to them. And once they took that print of that little shoe, they took that shoe home, because that's truly where the discussions need to happen around their kitchen table. So those shoes were given to the community, and it was up to them what to do with those shoes. So I can honestly report that it was done in a good way that respected all involved. We continue, and I continue to work with my colleagues to ensure that those flags are raised. They're raised on MMIW. Last year, we had over 50 red dresses hanging within City Hall. My goal is to have 100 and have them out in every facility because it's something that needs to always be remembered. It was absolutely beautiful that someone came to me and they said that they went into the City Hall for the first time. And when they went into the lobby as an Indigenous person, the first thing they noticed right off the bat was that red dress. And they said how beautiful it made them feel. Because when they walked in and they seen that red dress and then looked over and seen those yellow shoes, it was making a statement. It made them feel as an individual that their life did matter, that their sisters or aunties will always be respected and honored, and that those children will never be forgotten. How beautiful. That little space that we put up in that big, beautiful lobby does so much impact, if not to one, not to 10, but to 100 people. It doesn't matter. It's saying we as a city recognize that MMIW is still, whether it's May 5th, whether it's October 7th, or whether it's February 14th, every day we recognize that those family members are being impacted by their lost one, whether it was their mother, their grandmother, their sister, or auntie. One small gesture has a huge impact, and the community watches it, and they see that. I continue to work closely with the city's IPGM and the municipal operations to develop standardized procedures for Indigenous consultation. This is at the very beginning of the step. The first step was recognizing we needed to do this. The next thing within the people and cultural, we're looking through the policies and procedures and ensuring that it's through that READI lens, and I couldn't do that without my partner, Reem. As well, Reem has been there to guide me in my new position and support me, especially when we're talking about developing a report procedure for vandalism, property damage, and bias-motivated incidents. I also continue to do advising to all levels of staff, members of council, and city partners that's requested for me to come out and provide training to their staff and knowledge. I've always had the open door policy for people to feel comfortable to come and speak to me and ask questions and provide that safe space. You'll never be judged. I'll never judge anybody. Just come to me and ask. And if I don't have the answers, I'll find out the answers from somebody else. So looking ahead, the next steps is really embedding that training requirements within the corporate policies, onboarding process, annual professional development plans. As I talked about, it's really doing that collaboration with our local First Nations, the Métis, and our Inuit partners to co-design or advise on the training content to ensure that it's being respectful and that we can acknowledge it. For example, with the Inuit, I have some knowledge of the Inuit history, but I can't speak on behalf of them nor Métis. I will continue to work with individuals within city divisions to incorporate that READN lens across the organization. And again, this is done in partnership with Reem. Working collaborative with the Urban Indigenous Working Group, local First Nations, Métis, Inuit partners to also identify meaningful ways to recognize and honor Indigenous histories, cultures within the city. So it's really going out and doing my due diligence as well, right? Of going out and doing that consultation and finding out what they feel or what they would like to see. So I can then bring it back to the city to see how we can collaboratively work on these. It's also strengthening with me working again with staff to strengthen the purchase and partnership policy that creates equitable opportunities for Indigenous business, artisans, and service providers, because really that is truly a win-win relationship. And least but never last, it's really important of incorporating and implementing that Indigenous language into our city signage and naming policy. One thing I need people to really take a moment and understand is that's one of the first things that was taken away from us was our language. Our children don't speak the language, even though both my grandparents were fluent in Ojibwe. They were told that they were not allowed to speak the language to their children. or there would be no education for them. Because of that, my mother didn't even know why. She didn't know how to speak the language. She didn't know. And I told her I knew because I had that conversation with my grandfather because I'm that one grandchild. Why? And I asked that. I said, why was it growing up and even today, Grandpa, when I walk into the house, if you're speaking Ojibwe, you and Granny flip it into English. You never speak in the language in front of us. And then he explained to me why. How he was told that if his children spoke the language, they would not be able to go to school. Right? It was very difficult because my family grew off when I stated I was from Burley Falls as well, right? So they lived off the reserve. So that was their only education opportunity. And see, we're taught to be ashamed of trying to speak our language as well. 10 years ago, I'd never introduced myself in the language because I was too ashamed. I was too afraid that I'd pronounce a word and somebody would shame me for that. But in 10 years, I've grown. I've grown to understand that it is so important for me to be proud of who I am. And part of being proud of who we are is being able to feel that we're connected to where we live. So by having a simple name into our language, whether it's a street or a signage or another new building, it really shows that respect and that honor. As a city, you honor us. You understand. It's not about someone knowing how to pronounce the word, right? That's not what it's about. It's acknowledging and seeing it. As long as you see it and you can see what it means in English, that's important. But to me, having that one word, something as simple as a zoo of naming our animals Makwak, because that's a bear. Do you know how excited our little ones get when they see our language? Nowadays, we're attending more and more. Last year, I attended 3 language conferences for me to truly understand as Anishinaabe why it's so important for the city to embrace our language. It's something small that doesn't need to cost millions. And it can just be moving forward. Because at the end of it, we truly just want to move forward with the Indigenous community, show some pride. So whether it's a resident living here or some other family member coming in to visit an auntie or an uncle or visit their daughter because they're going to Trent University and they see that signage, they know this is a safe place. This is a safe place for my child to live. This is a safe place for my sister to relocate to the city by one small action. So with that, I'd like to say Chid Miigwech for listening.
Shelley, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the presenter? Councillor LaChica?
Thank you very much, Chair Hickey. Chubigwech, Shelley, for this presentation, and it's been remarkable, just the degree to which our march towards reconciliation has begun, and that you have been so instrumental in bringing us into motion and in a way that is clear and stretching for us in terms of opening our minds and our hearts to more in terms of building relationships. So thank you so much for all your work and for the presentation that you offered to us. A couple of questions. You mentioned your partner Reem and that in people and culture, you have your respective roles. Can you explain how your role is distinct from that of Reem, and why are the two roles side by side so very important? Thank you very much.
To the chair, Miigwech for those beautiful words. So to my understanding, this position actually came from the voice of Reem. For Reem understanding and acknowledging and knowing that this part of the portfolio is so huge. It is so huge. It's more of just building relationships. It's about bringing my knowledge forth and bringing our consultation teams together. So I think because it's so huge on the scale, that's why we have to focus into those relationships. And when I say my colleague at heart, we work together because that is my support. She is my support because she understands. Because as a city, you are very, very lucky that she was able to bring the two positions together. But it's time that we grow. In order to grow, that position had to be separate, that could completely dedicate their time to the Indigenous relations. And that's why we see a little bit of difference, right? Because there's someone there to be able to focus just on that.
Thank you. And just supplemental, if I may, Councillor Hakey. So would you say that anti-racism work, human rights, equity seeking groups and supporting those in our community it's a very distinct role from our Indigenous work that we need to do in reconciliation?
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you from the chair, or through the chair, sorry.
Thank you. I like this through the chair thing. I might try it at home. Councillor Burke.
Through the chair. Shelley, thank you. Very interesting to hear about the language. I just found out from my kids that are in elementary school that Indigenous children in their school have a chance when the rest of the kids are learning French to learn their own language. I thought that was pretty beautiful and forward of the school board to offer. I want us to start by recognizing the meaningful work behind this report. To thank you, Jen McFarland and Reem Ali, for your leadership and commitment to advancing reconciliation, equity, and inclusion within the city. The progress reflected in the report comes from a lot of care, collaboration, and relationship building. I have 5 questions, and they come from a place of support and shared responsibility, because I believe as council, we've endorsed these commitments and we have a role in making sure they're fully realized. And that means ensuring people that are leading the work have the resources, backing, and direction they need to truly embed reconciliation, anti-racism, and inclusion in everything that we do. The first question comes from the background section of the report. And we've had 2 incidences in Peterborough lately of racism that have sort of gone viral and have been spread in this viral way beyond the city. And so in this report, when staff summarizes the community coalition's 10 common commitments, I noticed that the word racism isn't used in the background, even though it appears often in the actual commitments that council endorsed and that are posted on the city's website. It talks about monitoring acts of racism and discrimination, both internally and externally. It talks about offering support for those experiencing racism. Could you or staff speak to how the commitments that specifically address racism are being fulfilled by the city and how that work connects to the recommendations in this report? And if they're not being addressed, what can we do?
Through the chair. That's a long question. I'll address that to my director for a second, and I'll chime in after it.
Through the chair, I'm not sure if, can you just summarize that question one more time?
So the staff report talks about the coalition's 10 common commitments that the city signed on to pledge as a commitment that council endorsed. And a lot of those actual commitments involve anti-racism work and accountability or commitments that specifically address racism. So my question is, how are those commitments that specifically address racism being fulfilled by the city, and how does that work connect to the recommendations in this report? And if they're not being fulfilled, what can we as a council do to help support them being fulfilled?
Through the chair, that is a big question. I'm gonna, I'll take a stab at it, and then I might let Reem try as well. The DEI work, the anti-racism work, is primarily the DEI advisor's role. There is definitely an overlap if there's any kind of racist act or potential racist act that could be related to Indigenous people. One of the big things is that we've been working on a reporting mechanism so that staff understand the proper protocol if there's any potential for a hate crime, that they weren't formally aware of the process. It's definitely a collaborative effort between the two roles, but anti-racism and the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities is definitely focused more on the DEI advisor role. That's the big distinction between the two, is that Shelley's role is primarily, the focus is Indigenous relations. The DEI work is as any minority group in general. It doesn't have to be race or religion. It could be disability. There's a lot of minority groups that are invisible. So the DEI advisor's role is to focus on all of those to make sure that everybody in the community feels comfortable and that services are accessible to them. Reem, did you want to add to that?
Thank you. Nadine, bonjour. Good afternoon. Yeah, I'd love to add to this. So Shelley's role is focused on Indigenous communities. Where that overlaps is when there's an intersectionality of those identities with other equity priority groups. So when we refer to equity priority groups, we're referring to women, to children, seniors, to LGBTQIA+ community members, newcomers, religious minorities, folks who are unhoused, folks who live on low income, and so on. And so where the equity areas overlap with Indigenous folks is those systemic areas that date back historically to injustices that not only historically are have happened, but also continue to in present days. So those specific areas around Indigenous identities are under Shelley's purview. All the other groups where there isn't that intersectionality of identity with Indigenous folks, that falls under my purview. For the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities, the 10 common commitments speak specifically to fighting racism and discrimination. And they name certain groups in the community that we have to work with, partners who we have to work with in addition to equity priority groups. One of those partners is present here today, is Peterborough Police Service, who has a reporting mechanism, a hate bias, hate incident reporting mechanism. And we depend on that mechanism to help us react to those appropriately. And again, that's part of the service that they offer. So the incidents, for example, that Councillor Burke referred to, those are, the police are made aware of those, and they investigate those to determine, by law, whether those fall under a hate incident or they reach the threshold of a hate crime. And I believe there's more work that they're working on currently. They're welcome to speak to that. Those kind of initiatives are going to be launched soon by them. But yes, in achieving those 10 common commitments, they are very high level goals. No municipality is intended to reach those within a short period of time. They are work that's ongoing for us. And it involves anything from collecting data and establishing mechanisms where we can collect the data so that we can understand our community better, to establishing those services that are serving that community, to ensuring that all community members are involved and reflected in the work that we do so that we can truly and genuinely and authentically work to building Peterborough to be the inclusive community that we want it to be.
Thank you so much. Second question through the chair. I guess you went over a little bit, you went over what that dialogue is happening with urban Indigenous groups. Is there any of that input that's being reflected in our housing and homelessness strategies? I know from our homelessness data that there's a disproportionate number of urban Indigenous community members who are unhoused. So I'm wondering how those conversations are helping to shape the city's approach. Is this something that could be added to the next step for Pillar 1?
Great question. Sorry, through the chair. That was a great question, Miigwech, because this is a discussion I just recently had within the last week. with an Indigenous agency to talk about the homelessness and how can we collaboratively come together and work with the city. So it is in the talking stage right now. It's also been recommended that that maybe I could lead and work with the leads on doing a consultation with Indigenous community, right? And finding out through their eyes what homelessness looks like and what we can do. So I know those are things that I am definitely going to be working on looking at because to my understanding on a report that was just written, that 41% of Indigenous people are homeless. And I just noticed that myself on Saturday when I was down at the Millennium Park. I had the opportunity to go out and speak to some of our Indigenous brothers and sisters that are struggling today.
Thank you. Through the chair, if senior leadership in the report is already bringing an inclusion and ready lens to their discussions at the leadership table, can we look formally at building that same lens into our council agenda so that staff reports are reviewed or presented through that ready lens as well, maybe with a column in our reports?
Yes. CAO Reina.
Yeah. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Currently, we are working on the new report format, in which we will explore all the options about Indigenous relations as well as DI and the climate change. So we will review it. So probably starting next year, we will bring a new report format.
And thank you, Councillor Burke. I have Councillor Duguay and, okay.
I'll edit.
You're on your second 5. I didn't remind you, but I will
thought
now.
so. I think it's great the inclusion of Indigenous voices at events. But do we have any plans to include Indigenous voices and participation in events that aren't specifically Indigenous focused, like civic celebrations, arts, or community events, so that the inclusion doesn't feel like it's just like a tokenism?
Through the chair, Miigwech, another great question, great comment, because that is so true. So one of the things I have been doing is I actually also work with Stoyan, right, for Canada Day, ensuring that that inclusiveness is there. We have Indigenous representation, not tokenism, but being part of it. I'm also very honored that staff reach out to me, ask me when they're doing openings for any of their community events that I also come and balance off. Not a land acknowledgement, I don't do those, but I do a blessing.
Chair,
Sure.
thank you, Shelley. Amazing.
What?
Thank you very much, Councillor. I have Councillor Duguay and his worship. Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Chair Hakey. Shelley, thank you for your impressive work. I'd like to thank you specifically for your work in resolving in a very pleasant and amicable manner I'll refer to it as the shoe display, how it's now it's found a home and a very respectful home within our council lobby and that of the red dress. I also wanted to thank you and whoever else was involved and scraped together whatever limited monies you had the day on the Hill. I had a chance to be there. It was important. And you're right, there were a lot of people there celebrating. And I don't think school children, from what I could tell, a lot of the school children attending it just wasn't a day away from the classroom. Mm-hmm. It was very meaningful to many of them. I did have a chance to stop and talk to students, teachers, and persons displaying information. So my thanks for your ongoing work, and I look forward to more of same.
Through the chair, to the Miigwech.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Riel.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. And Miigwech, Shelley, a week or so ago, I took a look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. 94 calls to action. 11 calls have been completed. 39 are in progress. So what could the city of Peterborough do to accelerate the implementation for the rest of those 94 calls to action?
Through the chair, Miigwech for that question. I think this goes back to my first request of that cultural competency training, that people truly need to understand our history and the impacts to Indigenous people to be able to move forward. You see, I had the opportunity to host a total of 4 trainings for the community, and over 130 people within those 4 came. And those individuals that came to the training, I truly believe walked away with something. So for us to be able to move forward for those other actions, we really need to stop and truly understand the history. Because to be a true ally, it's not asking that you walk in our moccasins for the whole mile, but to walk along the side of us, to support us, to truly say, I understand. I understand when you say, Shelley, that historical trauma and how it impacts the individuals today. We understand that. We understand why there's so much hesitance of coming forth and there's so much anger. We understand that. So I think that's the first step, is recognizing the importance of our history and how it impacts the Indigenous community and the city today. I hope that's sufficient for your answer. Thank you much, through the chair.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Councillor Riel, please.
Through the chair to Shelley, how is your rapport with the senior levels of government?
Senior levels of government today? Oh, sorry, through the chair.
Our local MPP and our local MP.
So during this first year, I've really built more relationships internally and trying to understand the city. Coming from an Indigenous background, because I worked within with Ontario Native Women's of Canada, being on a provincial and federal. One of the things I truly learned is it took me a lot just to understand the way that things work in a mainstream agency. Even this, right? I love that you're in a circle, because we do things in a circle, but we'd be passing that along. So at this time, I haven't really built those relationships other than asking Emma to come. But you know what? That quick time that she spent up at the hill and I was able to spend 15 minutes with her, I truly felt that connection. So that is my next steps, is being able to build those relationships with the provincial and federal. Does that answer your question?
Well, the reason I asked the question is that it's all right for senior levels of government to make rules and make policies, but it's like the municipality and local government is doing the heavy lifting. We're the closest to the people, and maybe that's where it should be, but there is a financial obligation, and also there has to be a recognition of the work that we're doing or what we're trying to do with truth and reconciliation. And that's why I asked the question, when you have 2 senior levels of government making policy and telling us what we should be doing, but they're very short on financial help or coming to the well, so to speak. We're doing the heavy lifting. That's why I asked the question.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions of the presenter? Shelley, thank you very much.
Should make
I'd like to welcome Councillor Vasiliadis. Thank you for getting here, and there'll be 100 lines on the mayor's office board for being late. I would call on Peterborough Police Service Chief. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we get a mover to move the recommendations? Councillor Parnell.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Shortly after that I arrived here after the election of October 2022, I had the opportunity, of course, to see the shoes on the front step that my predecessor had put in place. Those shoes, of course, represented the horrific history of residential schools in Canada, the loss of 5 generations of socialization, and the loss of 5 generations of parenting for our First Nations communities. But I did think those shoes were certainly showing the impact of weathering on the front steps. And I thought to myself, what a most undignified way to have those shoes on those steps. So we immediately called together the chief from Curve Lake, chief from Hiawatha, to start a conversation to what would be the appropriate memorial on the grounds of the city hall here to remind everyone the impact of residential schools. So over a period of time, we ultimately came together to what I consider now in our front foyer, one of the most significant and meaningful memorials in Canada today as it relates to residential schools. So I just want to thank, at that time, Chief Knott, Chief Laurie Carr, and of course, Shelley Knott for the tremendous work they did in establishing that memorial that will truly stand the test of time. The other thing, Mr. Chair, we may want to look at is at some stage across the road, there will be, I believe, some additions to the Veterans Wall of Honor. I believe it's time we put one of the sections in that honors our First Nations veterans. You know, for many of them that served in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War, they came back and they weren't afforded the benefits that non-Indigenous veterans got. For example, land under the Veterans Land Act and free schooling at university and colleges in Canada. And I do think when we, as I said, when we get that opportunity to add that, we should do that in honor of our First Nations veterans. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's moved by Councillor Parnell. We'll go to a vote to receive. A call on the Peterborough Police Services. Chief, I was kind of jumping the gun there. That's how anxious I am to hear about how you're going to save me. Thank you very much, Chief. Absolutely. It's the old adage, behind every strong man, there's a strong woman. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chair and members of council. I'd just like to start first by also acknowledging and thanking that I have Police Board Chair Mary Tendeshat here with me today, as well as our Vice Chair Drew Merritt, who are here to support. After all, this is their budget that I have the benefit of being able to present. Thank you. Also, I'd just like to start by thanking both Councillor Burke and Councillor Chicha. I think October 29th, we had a meeting and it was about the Downtown Action Committee. And we had two of our members who are here today from the DBIA, Noor and Sasha, who were present. And I, in a public setting, I wanted to say thank you for acknowledging the work of the Peterborough Police Service and what we've done downtown, our increased presence. And it was very much appreciated to hear from the two ward councillors that you acknowledged and recognized the efforts of the men and women of the police service. So thank you for that. So, having said that, we will get started on the 2026 budget. As you know, this will represent my third budget presentation to City Council, and as always, it is predicated on the responsibility and the requirement to provide adequate and effective policing. That is mandated under the Community Safety and Policing Act, and the Act specifies what that represents. That is crime prevention, law enforcement, maintaining public peace, emergency response, assistance to victims, and other prescribed functions. It is not, as I've mentioned previously, about enforcing municipal bylaws or providing court security. However, the provision of court security here in this city is the requirement of the police, and it is mandated in legislation. So it is a budgeted requirement, and that factors into our presentation here today. Slipped over. My screen looks a little different than yours. When I came in January of 2023, I inherited a budget, and I thank you for the budget that you provided to the police service in that year. That was 4%, offset by an $830,000 dip into the police reserves to keep the budget at 4%, with the understanding that there would be implications to that in the future. The return on that investment, as you see on the top line, a return of 2,825 arrests, resulting in 4,583 charges, criminal charges. That comes from 36,804 criminal occurrences. Now, in 2024, we saw a marked increase to our budget with the promise that you would see a marked increase in terms of return on investment. So we went in 2023 from 2,800 arrests to nearly 1,000 more at 3,500 arrests the following year, and 5,696, almost 5,700 criminal charges. So the bottom two lines on this particular chart represent January 1 to October 31st of 2024, and this year, because I came to you with a second request for my second budget presentation to you, with another promise to provide a return on investment. And as you can see before you, during the first 10 full months of 2024, we had made arrests of 2,900, almost 3,000 people, almost as many as the entire time the year before, and significant number of criminal charges, with fewer actual criminal occurrences. During the same period this year, and by the way, that year, we were up by 26% over the same period in 2023. This year, we are up 28% in terms of the number of people who've been arrested. Now, it's not that we're out seeking to criminalize people, but we're out to solve crimes. And often that results in their arrest. And when we have increased that rate of return of 28% during the same period of time for the money that this city council has invested in public safety, I would suggest that's a good return. If we look at that, that is 1,000 more arrested people than what we had in the entire year of 2023. In fact, if we weren't to arrest another person this year, we would already be 35% more productive this year than we were all of last year. I think that's a significant return on the investment that this city council has made in public safety. So the Community Safety and Policing Act, I've been mentioning this to council for quite some time. It is on top of mind for every police chief and every city councillor. This is the guiding legislation that directs the activities of the police. And much to Councillor Riel's point earlier, it is what our higher levels of government have mandated that municipalities pay for. Very little funding comes, not no funding, but little funding comes from the federal government and the provincial government. There are key training requirements that are driving significant challenges for our police service. There are also equipment challenges. Chief among them here are mental health awareness training. That is expensive. And unlike any other piece of legislation that I could find, it mandates the 2 universities, just 2, who can provide that training. They provide the syllabus, they provide the training material, and they provide the prescribed method in which the training has to be provided. It is named in legislation. We have no ability to vary from that. Therefore, we are stuck paying for that. We have to provide cultural competence and diversity training. Something we've done all along. It really sped up since 2016 with the introduction of the collection of identifying information and personal data, also known as Street Checks Act, that came out in that regulation. De-escalation techniques. There's new use of force protocols and additional firearms related training, which also comes with equipment requirements. Obviously, community engagement and relationship building, and I've certainly had relationship opportunities and building opportunities with Shelley Knott and Reem. Ethics and professional conduct, crisis intervention. A big one is the new mandatory training for special constables. Again, we have to provide training for the special constables who provide the security at the courthouse that we are required to provide. That training went from 0, other than what we provided in-house, to a mandatory 5 weeks of training. That came from nowhere. We had to create and provide that that mandatory training for all special constables. And that will have to be done every 2 years. Somebody has to provide that, and the time has to be provided for that. With that came new equipment for the special constables, new uniforms. They can no longer drive a vehicle that says police. They have to drive a vehicle that says special constable because they have to be identifiably different than police officers. And there's some movement afoot right now at the provincial level to create a regulation that says the very same things for our auxiliary members who are volunteers, all of whom have day jobs. And I recently had an opportunity to contribute to those conversations to try and scale back some of what the province is putting forward in terms of what we should be doing with our auxiliary members. We have new training for all our supervisors. That critical incident training, as you can see the second last bullet, that's a requirement that didn't exist before either. It was a best practice. It's now a mandatory requirement. And at every level, a supervisor, at the sworn side, sergeant, staff sergeant, and inspector, there is additional training that is required. The way the act is written, you can't be promoted until you've had that training. Where do you get that training? Only at the Ontario Police College and at the very highest level, the Canadian Police College. Access is limited. And then, of course, new investigative training requirements that go over and above anything we've had to provide before. And we know that, for example, it can take anywhere between 5 to 8 weeks to train a sexual assault investigator. That's significant. That's just for the basic courses. Not even the specialized sexual assault investigation training. So we have increased needs. Now, when I mentioned the previous screen about the number of arrests and the number of charges, which I think our community wants to see is where are the police and what are they doing about crime? It comes at a cost because somebody has to prepare all that work to get those cases to court. And we don't want cops with guns on their hips who are expensive doing the paperwork associated to preparing those things, doing the paperwork associated to disclosure. The Ministry of the Attorney General tells us when we have to disclose certain evidence and information in relation to our criminal court cases. That is not discretionary for us. Supreme Court legislation tells us when cases have to be heard, depending on the nature of the type of offense. And the Ministry of Attorney General tells us when those disclosure requirements have to be made. And so we need to invest in people to make those demands and to meet those demands. Just one more. And so these are the staffing requirements that we will be putting forward in 2026. The first two are sworn members. You'll recall last year when I came to council, council asked us if we could rework our budget. Could we reduce it by at least 1%? We did. That required me to remove 2 sworn officers from our budget ask last year. And I did at that time acknowledge that we would be coming back this year because we needed those people last year, but we deferred them to the following year. That is what those 2 officers represent. The remainder of these people are all civilian staff who are there to bolster a system that is buckling behind the scenes because we are not making the required timelines that we need to meet for legislative and court purposes. We have 1 court security officer on here. Truth be told, I could probably times that by 5 or 6 because since this budget process started, the Ministry of Attorney General came out with new standards for court security. And they've prescribed what that should look like. We are band-aiding that together by using sworn officers, sometimes from the street, to meet the requirements of what is needed in the courts. We don't have an option for that. It is something we're simply mandated to provide. Our 911 communicators are overwhelmed with the number of calls for service that they receive. And so in order to offset that and the overtime that is increased in that area to make those demands, we're looking to increase that by 2 part-time personnel so that they can fill in at the times when we need them, not to be part of full-time staff. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tia, who will tell you what that costs.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tiang Wei, the finance manager of our police service. Thank you for this opportunity. I also like to thank the council members who attended our public meeting on October 9. Your time was appreciated. Today, given the time limit, I will be concise and specific about what the budget funds and about why it's needed. What's in the 2026 operating budget? Our 2026 operating budget is $47.9 million, with $6.4 million projected revenue. The net requirement is $41.5 million. This represents a 9.8% increase over 2025 driven by non-discretionary costs and compliance with the Community Safety and Policing Act. The 2026 operating budget includes personnel services, $42.2 million, representing 88% of the total budget. Non-personnel costs, $5.7 million, representing the remaining 12%. Our services are people-driven. Out of every $100 spent, $88 fund staff deliver services directly to you. $9.90 buys the materials and supplies they need. $1.40 supports training to keep services safe and compliant. 50 cents cover fleet maintenance by Public Works. And 20 cents is set aside to manage future costs. Let's break it down further. The $9.90 envelope must cover IT services, cybersecurity, digital evidence, cloud, radios, NG911 uptime and support, uniforms and equipment, fuel, fleet repairs, investigative materials and supplies, building maintenance, insurance costs, and legal services. In short, our operating budget, $1 represents 88 cents people, 12 cents everything else to keep them safe and effective. What's driving the 9.8% year-over-year increase? That 9.8% is made up of two parts. The blue portion of the large pie chart represents base pressures. 5.6% is the cost that we must pay to stand still. If we simply rolled 2025 forward, known pressures total 6.2%. Increased revenues, net of program fees, partially offset these pressures to land at 5.6%. The 4.2% represents $1.6 million compliance costs. What's driving the 5.6% standstill cost? Contractual salary increases and benefits adjustments, 5.5% year-over-year increase. Retiree healthcare costs up 45%. Payroll requirements up 3.6%. Increases on contract services, software, and licenses, 12.2%. In short, now the 4.2% compliance costs are for funding 10 full-time equivalents, training, and technology to meet the Act's mandates while preserving frontline services. This is a maintenance and compliance budget. It maintains service levels, meets legal requirements, and manages risk. Our capital budget is $1,413,950. Our priorities are safety, compliance, and reliability across 3 critical areas: replacing end-of-life fleet assets, upgrading overdue radio interlink equipment, and implementing technologies that reduce cybersecurity risk. We recognize every dollar is public money. We will continue to drive efficiency, maximize external funding, and report progress twice a year so that you can track delivery and results. What residents get for this investment? In practical terms, reliable 24/7 response, stronger investigations and court outcomes, and safer communities for families and businesses. Our budget aligns with the board's strategic priorities and the Community Safety and Policing Act. Finally, what changed since the draft budget book in printing? Council was advised on November 3rd, last Monday, our operating budget will be updated to reflect the lower estimates for employee health premiums. The net requirement is now $41.3 million, representing a 9.22% increase over 2025. The employee benefit adjustments, it reflects the complexity of budgeting and also reflecting the complexity of budgeting and why we need to monitor our financial transactions and major cost drivers throughout the year. Some cost drivers are outside our control and can materially move the budget. This final, the latest budget adjustments alone represent 0.6% swing. It just happened to reduce pressure by 220,000 this time. It could just easily move the other way. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Chief and Tia. And we do have some questions. Councillor Burke.
Chair Hickey, thank you, and through you to the presenters. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chief Betts, for coming, and thanks for the shout out. I think as the town ward representatives, our residents are often contacting us with police issues, so it helps to have people like Jamie Hartnett and Rob Fitzgerald be really proactive with us responding to concerns from our constituents. So appreciate that. And I went to the public budget presentation, and this is, like you said, the third round of budget asks that we've had together, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what is mandatory and what is discretionary. And I understand that in terms of the police project, which is kind of separate, you've responded that everything is mandatory. In the cover letter from the board, It also emphasizes that a lot of the asks are due to regulations that are mandatory. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around that because it is a tough budget. You're asking for 10 new positions, you know, and so I don't understand. Could the police services do with, I don't know, 6 or 7 instead of the 10? It's not clear to me which of those positions are mandatory, and I understand the need. You've done a good job at explaining to us the need for these positions, but I'm just trying to understand which positions are mandatory. And in my review of the Community Safety and Policing Act, that act sets out broad obligations for adequate and effective policing, but it does not appear to mandate specific positions such as police recruiter. And I didn't see that position in any section of the act that I could locate. So is that position mandatory?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair. So a great question, and you're quite right. Yeah, the Act does not say you need to have a court security officer, it just says you have to provide court security. Doesn't say that you have to have a freedom of information officer or coordinator, but you have to respond to freedom of information requests. Does not lay out a single position other than police officers that we have to have. So does a recruiter specifically appear in the Act? Absolutely not. However, I cannot hire anybody without a recruiter. I cannot manage internal transfers or internal postings without somebody to do that particular work. So everything that's in here, if I take somebody out of their job to do that job, I'm no longer performing the job that they had to do. So if it's a records clerk and I said, you're now my recruiter, first off, I'd have to train them to be a recruiter, because there is a mandatory training requirement that goes along with that. Like everything in policing, there is mandatory training to meet that adequacy. That means they're not doing the job that I required them to do. So I can't simply slice this off the corner of their desk. What I'm providing to you is what's required for adequate and effective policing. And you're exactly right. There's very broad sort of definition of what that looks like, other than to say that a municipality that maintains a municipal board shall provide the board with the sufficient funding to comply with this act and the regulations. And so that's what we're coming to you through our police board, is to be able to provide that, which is the adequate and effective policing.
Thank you. And through the chair, what is the actual implementation timeline for compliance with the new CSPA standards, and how many of those requirements have already been met?
Yeah, so there is no specific, line in the sand for many of the adequacy requirements. The Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police have done a review of the Act in its totality and estimate that the closest timeline that any police service would be able to meet the requirements and satisfy all the mandated requirements of this Act is the end of 2027. We won't be there. I'm just going to tell you that right now. We will not be compliant because I don't have the money. You don't have the money to get us to that level of compliance right now. The training that is required to get us to that level, we simply will not be compliant with. I've had this conversation with the Inspectorate of Policing and the representatives of that oversight, that we will do everything we can to be in compliance, and they recognize that no police service is going to be in compliance. There are things that I have to be in compliant by April 1, 2025. I simply won't be able to be there.
So through the chair,
Burke, this is your second 5. You're okay?
yeah, thanks. So through the chair, then does that give us or the board flexibility in terms of implementing what needs to be done? Because in one hand, it's being framed as it has to be done yesterday, but then I've just heard in your answer to say that it's unreasonable to expect that it can be done even with the deadline of 2027.
What I'm providing to you through the staged approach to this budget will be to get us to compliance as quickly as possible. If we delay any aspect of that, we will be in significant concerns. As I mentioned before, we have not been compliant with the previous regulation 3/99, also known as adequate and effective policing. We are at risk. The city is at risk. The city has been non-compliant with a host of things, from CRTC requirements for Bell for providing 911 communication services. That is a risk to the city. And so any delay increases the risk substantially to the city, to the police service, and ultimately to public safety.
Thank you. Through the chair, my final question to Chief Betts. At the police budget meeting, you mentioned discussions with the police college in Elmer about students using the training room that's going to be built for VR exercises. Will the police service be generating revenue from this arrangement?
Yeah. So thank you for asking that. For the benefit of those that weren't at the budget presentation that I had made a few weeks ago, the intent of that training is cost avoidance as opposed to cost revenue generating. Every time I have to send officers out of this city, that is officers off the front line, it's officers who are being paid overtime to backfill that. So by bringing people into our city, I'm avoiding having to send my officers out of the city, paying for their hotels, paying for their accommodations. It's all contractually negotiated, paying for their food, and then paying for all the backfill that goes along with that. So this is more about cost avoidance than revenue generating. Not to say that there isn't an option to seek a revenue generating business case as we determine what our full capacity will be able to provide that, but it is a means for bringing other police services and their staff to our city. So instead of us spending money in their cities, I'd like them to spend their money in our city.
Thanks. And through the chair, so I think the point, what I was getting at with your statement just now and with the statement at the last meeting is by bringing officers, whether they're from the police college or not, to our facility to receive that training, will the police service actually be getting paid to provide that training, or is this just something done out of an altruistic nature?
We would not be providing any training to anybody else for free. This would be a cost sharing kind of an approach, so cost avoidance. If there were 3 police services that were presenting the training, they would help to offset the cost. We would not be providing trainers to train Durham officers, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooke. I have Councillor Riel and then Duguay. Councillor Riel.
To the chair, to Steve or Chief Betts, thank you very much for being here, and Tia, thank you for being here. One of the big cost drivers is certainly wages, pensions, and benefits of any public service. I went back and I looked at, I mean, you're asking for 10 more people. And since 2022, we have, this council has okayed 59 hires, both police officers and civilians. When I look at the new ask here, I see a lot of asks that can be done because the police department is a part of the city. And a lot of the asks that you have here can be done in coordination with the city. I mean, you ask for IT, you ask for help in your financial, your HR. These are all things that the city's departments already have. Why wouldn't there be a look at those departments looking at what we have that can offer you that service, as opposed to asking for a person just working for the police department that could be used in a department that we already have?
Chair, through you then. So I understand the nature of that question. We share the resources that the city has. My understanding is that the city's already got tight sort of resources in terms of being able to provide their own and meet their own needs. That aside, many of the needs that the police have are unique to the police. This year, at the end of this year, we will no longer be receiving core IT services from PTS. We will be a standalone IT service because there is greater efficiency and, more importantly, effectiveness by separating from the city. There are areas where we could coordinate resources with the city to realize savings. The positions that are on this particular screen are not one of those areas. With the exception of the last 2, the 911 communicators, there is an opportunity there to tie into another service within the city, and that would be fire for providing dispatch services. But that would require opening up contracts with fire, with the police, and who's going to provide that service. There is big savings to be had there. Make no mistake. Not easy to achieve or attain, but there is savings to be had. These particular ones on here, there is nobody at the city who's going to provide court security. So I can't do that. There is nobody here at the city that's going to provide digital evidence management services for disclosing video and other information and records to get to the courts in a timely fashion. We have one finance manager, Tia. She already leans on the city staff, but the city staff have their hands full with the amount of work that they're doing, and that they can't then take on the work of the police service in that regard either. So this is the nature of what we are asking for. There is nobody in this city who will do electronic forensic and analysis. There's nobody who's going to go through the phones, through the computers, looking at evidence of child pornography. That is a job for police to be doing. So this ask is exclusive. There is one area, as I said, and that's in the communications, where we could attain real savings, but that would come at a significant shift in how this city does business and the contracts with both those associations.
Through the chair to the chief, and not to get argumentative, but the point that I'm trying to make is that since 2022, the councils of the day and the council here have come to the well and give you, I believe, the resources that you need to do your job. And if we add 10 more, we're up to probably 70 new hires. All of them can't be filling attrition at the police, that many amount of people have retired. So therefore, it's like in the public service. And if you're looking at what happened to the budget last week with the federal government, they're going to lay off 140,000 people.
Mm.
And so I can see a trickle-down effect coming to both provincial and municipal governments, looking to the cost factors of wages, pensions, and benefits. The point that I'm trying to make here is, I think that we as a council have done our job in trying to provide the police force. And I looked at the numbers across Ontario and where the city of Peterborough stands as a police force, and we're probably in the middle of that range of a police force for a community the size of 83,000 people. So that's the point that I'm trying to make, that I think that I, as a city councillor, have tried to give you people to do the job.
Chair, through you then, and I'm grateful for what City Council has done. City Council did approve a staffing plan in 2022 to 2023 prior to me coming on board that identified a number of hires. We have not even hit that yet, and City Council approved that. So while we are hiring to attain that number. I can certainly come back to you with what that looks like, but that was a 5-year staffing projection that this city council, or your predecessor, I think you were on city council prior. Is that correct, councillor? Yep. So you guys approved at that time a certain hiring for a 5-year staffing plan. We are making our way through that staffing plan, adjusting as appropriate. We have scaled down in certain areas and we've scaled up as demand dictates in other areas. There wasn't the same demand, for example, for digital evidence management or forensic analysis 5 years ago as there is today. We didn't have the demands for prescribed court security, new court security regulations 5 years ago that we do today. So we are seeing an increase in certain areas, and we've increased and adjusted those staffing requirements from what was previously approved by council in terms of a total volume of people. One of the areas, as you touched upon, the federal government is looking at laying off people, which is horrific for the numbers that you're speaking of. But I think you'll find that none are related to public safety. Public safety is paramount. That is what we're providing. That is what you're funding. And that is what we're providing in terms of a delivery of service for this community.
Thank you, Councillor Riel. I have Councillor Duguay, then Crowley. Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Chair Hickey. Chief Betts, as always, thank you for your attendance. On a personal note, in my neighborhood, there's been a few moments where I've had to see our police service at work, and I appreciate their efforts and their commitment to make sure delicate matters are held in are conducted in a professional manner. Chief Betts, you probably are aware, I think Councillor Crowley at a recent, he didn't do anything wrong, but Councillor Crowley, yeah, what? Yeah. at a recent council meeting, there was a motion, we expressed concerns vis-a-vis the cost imposed upon police service for courts, security. So I'm sure you're aware of it. This is more, perhaps, Mr. Chairman, more of a comment, but it strikes me that police services across Ontario are having the very same presentations being made to them at this very same time as they're contemplating budget, and we're all feeling a financial squeeze. And arises from an inadequate downflow of funding associated thus with the recent changes to how police services are conducted at the municipal level. So it might be something I would follow up with Councillor Crowley, my colleagues. It would interest and I appreciate the board is in attendance, that perhaps we need to send another message through to Queen's Park that as a community, and that we, adequate funding relative to the community, the CPSA, if I have it correct.
CSPA.
CSPA, I was close. That it needs to have proportionate funding. Now, my question perhaps to, if I might, to Mayor Leo or Councillor Baldwin, I was trying to see through my research if we've done that recently. I couldn't find a motion to that effect, or perhaps to Mr. Kennedy, the clerk, if there was a motion to that effect.
Mr. Kennedy, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I remember maybe short, but I'm recalling just the most recent motion you're referring to, which was of the council meeting on November 3rd, which was approved. And it's certainly staff's intention that we would, as per the motion, we would move that forward to the Premier of Ontario, Minister, Solicitor General, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario. And we've also been in communication with our colleagues across the road with that as well.
So if I might, this is not meaning to take or diminish the important role that our mayor and Councillor Baldwin play, but Chief, if a motion or resolution of council to that effect was adopted, I'm assuming it wouldn't offend the police service in any way if we said to the province, we need more financial help?
Chair, through you, it would not offend me. In fact, I would point you to City Council in LaSalle, who actually has drafted a similar document to what you're speaking of. It might not surprise you to know that the chiefs of police across this province talk on a fairly regular basis, and the 32 small and mid-sized police chiefs talk more frequently because our communities are disproportionately affected by the changes of this new legislation. I don't have an in-house counsel who can go through the act for me and pull out all the pieces that are pertinent to policing timelines and compliance requirements. The big police services, those that I work for, have multiple lawyers on staff who do that work for them. So we don't have the luxury of some of these things. I myself have advocated strongly for a more equitable distribution of grant funding. I'm very familiar with the motion that Councillor Crowley made. I had an opportunity to collaborate on that. So I know what was written and what was presented, and I'm appreciative of City Council's support. But I know that there is a similar letter that maybe Council could look at from LaSalle. I know other mid-sized police services are doing the same.
So if I might, a final question or request, Mr. Chairman, to Chief Betts, the resolution from LaSalle, if that is something that you could perhaps make it available to the clerk and the clerk could distribute to council, I'd certainly be something I'd be interested in learning more of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duguay. I have Councillor Crowley, please.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. And thank you, Chief. And I want to also thank you for your help with creating that notice of motion with me, and Commissioner Freeman as well for all of his help. I know that to Councillor Dugay's point, we are under a financial crush, and you are aware that we're under a financial crush. I think that it, and I could be wrong, but it looks like it's about $17 million is roughly the amount of money, my math could be terrible, that is required for the 4.2%, the adequate and effective policing portion of the ask. I'm 1.6. Okay, so I got a decimal point off. So you mentioned that we are so through you, Chair, Chief, you mentioned that we're dangerously non-compliant, that the city is compliant, and we won't be compliant by 2027. What what sort of danger is the city in if we remain in a state of non-compliance, other than the potential of public safety being at risk? Is there any other potential danger?
Yeah, so my job is to mitigate those risks and to look at and sort of identify what is going to present the least amount of concern, because the first head on the chopping block is mine. So that is my first initial risk, is how do I minimize the risk to non-compliance? Things around equipment is a mandatory, we shall be compliant. There are certain things that are in the works that will get us to compliance, but there are other areas that are, for example, some of the training around specialized investigations. If I can increase the amount of time an investigator can stay in an area so I don't have to train a new investigator, I can mitigate against some of those risks. The fact is, I can't leave somebody investigating sexual assaults against children for an extended period of time, because that has its own back end implications associated to well, wellness, quite frankly, right? So there are certain things that I can mitigate against. They're mostly around that kind of thing, but there are areas that we simply can't. For example, when I got here, we were dangerously out of compliance on providing protective personal equipment to our staff. We had dozens of officers who had bulletproof vests, some of which had expired over a decade and a half previous. And that was an attempt by the service at that time and administration at that time to cut costs to meet budget restraints. So they chose to reduce the amount spent on PPE to meet budget requirements. I will not do that. I cannot compromise on officer or member safety. It is unconscionable to do, and I do not believe the city council would support that we do that. So those are the types of things. We have not been, but we are now with the soon to be opening of the NG 911 backup. We have not been forever compliant with CRTC and Bell rules around backup communication centers for 911. So that is an area that we're not compliant in. We're not compliant in the, for example, holding facilities within that police facility across the road. But those are things that are in the works to be rectified. So when I say we won't be compliant by 2027, that's an area, for example, we won't be compliant with, but we're in the process of getting there, and that helps us mitigate against some of those risks.
Thank you for that answer, Chief. I really appreciate it. If I just one more small question, if I may. It's not really budget related, but now that I see you here discussing the information of the budget, and at the budget meeting that we were all, well, a lot of us were at, I'm just wondering, have you, and forgive me, Chair, for asking, but have you given any more thought about maybe doing another sort of ward information session regarding policing and the status of, what's happened this year? I know you did one last year in Monaghan Ward, which was great, or most wards. But, I think that maybe early in 2026, if you're available, I'd love to have another one.
So Chair, through you, I will put it to City Council. If you would like us to be part of one of your town ward meetings, we will happily attend. But you are, as the councilors, organize them, and we will attend and present that information because it's your meeting that you've asked us to present to, and we're there for you.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Chief, so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley, for making a long meeting longer. We appreciate that. Any other questions of the chief? Chief, I have a question. I got 2 emails and a phone call from people that would like to see police defunded. Can you please respond to that comment where they want to defund the police?
So defund the police is a catchy little phrase that we tend to hear bantied about and thrown around, but with a whole lot of non-context. What does that actually mean? There are those that are abolitionists that want to see it abolished altogether. We want no police. That clearly isn't going to happen. There are those that want to see us reduce the amount of the police budget or the size of the police service. There are provisions within the CSPA that allow for that, but it has to get approval from the minister and the inspectorate of policing in order to accomplish that. So we can't necessarily go down that road either. There are those who want to see a redirection of funds from policing to other social services where other agencies might be best able to respond. Now, that I can support, but I can't support it as a cutover without the appropriate infrastructure in place to accommodate that kind of a request. So as I mentioned and the councillors who were present and I know some had to send their regrets, but those who were there when we did our community presentation, I explained that the chiefs of police support that kind of, bless you, support that kind of reallocation. But we also know that we need to ensure that that social safety net is well in place before you cut over the policing resources. Because right now, we are the only 24/7 operation, emergency service, aside from fire and EMS, but they don't provide that level. In fact, what we've seen is a significant increase in demand on police to be present to protect EMS workers at the calls they're going to. So there they are to provide medical treatment and life-saving measures, and they have to fear for their safety in increasing numbers to the point where they call the police to protect them so that they can do their job. We see the same types of requests with other social service providers. So eliminating the police in those areas isn't necessarily a realistic expectation. But would we like to divest ourselves of the entire response, for example, to medical or mental health crisis? Absolutely. I would support that 100%. But I can tell you, in order to accomplish that, you will need to have a police presence. There is a reason that our mental health professionals partner with a police officer when they go out on the road, and their teams of our MCIT. It's because they need that protection. There is a reason they wear bulletproof vests, because they need that protection. So it won't be a total shift, but there is if there is a will of council to double spend, because there will be a requirement to ensure that this infrastructure is in place before you can cut from this infrastructure, then that is something I can support. But I would caution against doing it as a straight cutover. And that's the piece people seem to forget, is that there is a need to do something like that.
Chief, thank you very much to you, Deputy Chief, other members of the service, and certainly the board members for your presentation. We'll move this, moved by His Worship. Any comments, Your Worship?
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Quickly, a small bit of history. The council from 2018 to 2022 provided financial resources, the Police Services Board, to do an extensive review of policing in Peterborough. That report was pretty clear that we had both a deficiency on the uniform side and a deficiency on the civilian side. So this council responded to that consultant's report to invest the resources to rebuild and reinforce the Peterborough Police Service to those men and women that potentially put their lives on the line each and every day. And we're finally bringing them back to where they need to be. So I think this council should take a high degree of satisfaction in providing additional resources to the Peterborough Police Service over 4 years to rebuild what is truly a very fine force.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any other comments? If not, we will go to a vote. As we have a budget. And that is carried. Committee reports, we will go to 11B, and Councillor Duguay, do you wish to remove the report? Would you? You could, or you could move it.
Chair Hickey, I would be prepared to move it, but I'd like to offer a very quick comment.
Absolutely. Go ahead. You have the floor.
I believe joining us this evening, Jeanette Lovey-Smith is here, so she may or may not be required to supplement, but I'm very pleased to say that the Conservation Authority partners with the city of Peterborough in terms of the management of the Beaver Mead Campground, and it's a financial success. I believe this year our levy, the portion we had budgeted, anticipated from the city, we've exceeded that budgetary amount. So kudos to Orca staff for their role in this regard. Secondly, I thought it would be very appropriate to advise council that many are aware of the provincial decision to create a conservation agency. It is early days yet to understand what that will mean to our conservation authority. I believe there is a meeting scheduled on November 12th, and then there is a subsequent meeting. Jeanette Lovey-Smith, together with Chair Mike Metcalf, is attending November 17th. I would have liked to have been in a position as vice chair of the authority to provide more update, but it's early days. And Jeanette is here that, Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, there might be questions about that I'm not able, if this is appropriate, if my colleagues have questions, Jeanette's in attendance. If not, I'm certain we'll be reporting back to council in due course. Thank you for the opportunity, and I would be prepared to move the acceptance.
Thank you, Councillor Duguay. Any other comments? Your worship.
Mr. Chair, at our mayor's meeting with MPP Smith last Wednesday evening, the consolidation of conservation authorities across the province of Ontario was a topic of discussion at that meeting, and MPP Smith did indicate as this process evolves that he would be back to respective municipalities in our area to provide updated information.
Thank you very much. Councillor Riel, please.
Through the chair to Ms. Smith, the allotment to Orca is roughly 60% of your appointment. Is that by population or weighted assessment?
Ms. Smith, if you'd like to come up and take a stab at that. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair and Council, for being here today. So it is by population. All conservation authorities receive what's called our assessment from the ministry, and it is based on population.
Very much.
If I can, I would also like to add that the apportionment for each of the municipalities is a result of us having a zero increase in our operating budget and just adding a small levy to our capital. So we've done a lot of great work financially managing the authority to come in at a zero increase, which is yeah, a lot of work. And I appreciate the board. I would also just like to take the opportunity, since I'm here, if I, Mr. Chair, the board will be having a very thorough discussion at their next meeting. And with that, I will be asking to come out to all of our member municipalities to provide an update with the response that the board would help craft at that meeting.
Ms. Smith, thank you very much. And anytime you're welcome to come with a zero budget in mind. Moved by Councillor Duguay. We'll take a vote. That is carried. 11C, Councillor Duguay, please, if you wish to move it and speak to it, you go right ahead, young man.
I'm prepared to move it, but I'm at really was my discussion points will be left, Mr. Chairman, post November 17th, 18th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor LaChica, please.
Thank you very much, Chair Hakey. I was going to ask if I could move it. Councillor Riel and I are currently on the Board of Health. I just wanted to say that it's been an exciting time attending Lakeland's public health strategic planning sessions and board meetings, and just to state, you know, we're living in a time. We turn on the news today. We heard that after 30 years. That Canada's eradication of measles has been lifted. So now we're seeing outbreaks arise in new ways because a variety of circumstances contributing to that. But we're in a new horizon in terms of outbreaks, pathogens, pandemic perhaps could occur because of the different factors that we see that may be related to climate change. So strengthening our public health is such an important piece in terms of community safety and well-being. And the long-term gains of what we have done together as joint municipalities and First Nations to build that strength and to harmonize in the long view, it will certainly be optimum in terms of the services that will be provided to our larger community. So I just wanted to say that we have a resilient outlook because we're maximizing our efficiency, strengthening, streamlining our public health. So just an exciting time. And thanks to Councillor Riel for his work on the board and Councillor Hakey as well for your work last year as we march towards the merger. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chica, and I apologize. Councillor Duguay raised his hand initially, but he has he'd like you to move the motion, please.
And through you, Chair, thank you, Councillor Duguay. It wouldn't have mattered to me either way. Just wanted to make those remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'll go to a vote. And that is carried. 11E, Downtown Business Improvement Area Budget. Councillor Burke. Please.
Thank you, Chair Hakey. I'll be glad to move the report. I know the executive director and the board chair from the DBIA are here. Is it okay to ask them? I have some questions for them. Is it okay to ask them questions?
Absolutely, if they'd like to
Thank
come
you.
up. Noor? And I was going to move the report, so I'm kidding. You go ahead.
Got jokes tonight.
Gotta have some fun.
Yeah, thank you. Whoa.
Noor, thank you very much for being here.
Anytime.
Sorry.
Are you okay?
Yeah, thank you, Noor. Through the chair, Noor, thank you so much for being here and the work that you do. I had some questions from the budget and from your letter. In my review of the proposed 2026 budget, the executive director's letter highlights, quote, streetscape and placemaking initiatives as a priority in 2026. Yet the detailed budget eliminates the streetscape line item, which in 2025 represented $35,600. Can I just have some clarification on whether those funds have actually been allocated to any streetscape improvements under another heading, or whether the priority has been dropped for 2026?
Noor?
Yeah, so the priority has not been dropped. The street budget line specifically referred to the Clint contract that we had that ended in March of this year. And the city's public work took on that work. When we say our priority is streetscape, it is partnering with public works to make sure, the streets are clean and safe for everyone to use.
Thank you. Through the chair, in your letter, you also mentioned regular maintenance and cleanliness. And I'm wondering what that looks like in a tangible way. Are there new activities or changes that we notice on the ground? I know that the city, from our city side, internally, we have a plan, both short-term and long-term, for maintenance. But is there anything new coming from the DBIA specifically? And is that work being funded through the levy from members?
Thank you, and through the chair, the work that the city is doing is being supported through the BIA. So I know this year the city wasn't able to put planters on Hunter Street East. We did that. Now we had extra funds. We were able to do it. Now that's not necessarily the case. Maybe next year. I don't know. So it's more of a supportive role that we have.
Thank you. Through the chair. Also looking at the marketing and promotion line on the DBIA budget, it's a significant amount, and it seems to have stayed consistent from year to year. Could you speak to how that spending is evaluated for impact and whether there are new ideas or partnerships that are being explored to reach audiences in a more dynamic way?
Absolutely. So our marketing spending is a bit, I would say, high compared to probably other not-for-profits, but it is our mandate to market the downtown. That said, yes, we are looking at new initiatives. So we are partnering with the city comms team and through tourism to be an edible magazine. Now, being an edible magazine is quite pricey. So we're sharing the cost to promote downtown and the city as a whole. So that is one initiative that we're doing. Another initiative that we're doing, and it is through our marketing dollars, is we have branded merch that we sell to then be able to purchase more marketing.
Much. Through the chair, the casino settlement makes up about a quarter of the budget. Is there a long-term plan for replacing that revenue once the agreement ends?
Yes, we're currently developing a plan because we're halfway through the agreement. Next year will be our halfway through point. Yes, we are always looking at new ways to generate revenue. Last year we started selling merch. We continue to expand that and working with local artists to have more merchandise that we can sell. Another way we're looking at is whenever there's a fund that we're applicable to apply for, we apply for just to create new programs and put our name out there for other funders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. I have Councillor Duguay, Riel, and his worship. Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Chair Hakey. Noor, thank you for attending tonight. Sasha, thank you for as well attending. I'd like to start off by congratulating the DBIA for what I have seen as a renewed energy and positive outcomes within our central area. I particularly appreciate your newsletters and your events. You will be, I think last year, perhaps together with the city and perhaps even with his worship, the Christmas tree lighting event, that will continue again this year?
Yes, it is scheduled for December 5th at 5 p.m. and I invite you all to attend.
I look forward to attending once again. Did I understand you correctly? I thought you heard saying that you are contemplating or DBA a partnership with city tourism vis-a-vis some of your events, your marketing initiatives. Is that correct?
We're not contemplating it. It's happening.
Okay.
We work together very closely.
I like that positive, contemplation, because I have seen and I've actually had folks chat about generally some of your promotional material that are new, are visiting, and they rather were smitten by the material. So congratulations in that regard. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Riel, please.
Through the chair to Noor, when I was looking at your budget, I see that 60% of it is for wages, pensions, and benefits. And that is just leaving 40% for your core business of promotion, security, cleanliness. Do you have a plan? Because the cost seems to be shifting from your core business of why the DBA even exists. As a former member of the DBIA in a business that I had downtown, the impetus for the DBIA was for, like I said, promotion, security, and the beautification of the downtown. So how do you figure to do that with 40% of your budget?
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, and through the chair. So what you see the line here is office and administration, and it's less really about wages. Like the wages doesn't even get 50% of that. It's a lot less. It is our overhead costs, our rent, our printing, so our graphic design, our website. So we have 2 websites, our social media, they all fall under that budget line, and that's why it seems a bit high, but it does support our marketing efforts as well.
Much for the clarification.
Thank you very much. I have His Worship, Councillor Lachika, and Mr. Latesky Don. Your Worship.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and Nora and Sasha, thank you very much for being with you this evening. My question is this. Revitalization, of course, is a very important vision to keep a downtown healthy, prospering, and a view for the future. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just would like to get your view on the importance of a new convention, entertainment, and sports center in the heart of downtown Peterborough.
Thank you, and through the chair. As you know, Mayor Leal, we've been very supportive of that, as it will bring more increased foot traffic and business to the downtown.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Lachika, please.
Thank you very much, Chair Hakey. Through you to Noor, great to see you. It's been a pleasure to take in just all that you've been doing. It seems like so many members are encouraged by the sidewalk sales, the movie nights, the events at Quaker Square, all of what you've done to sort of animate the city and get people coming to events that are downtown. Thank you for your invitation to the AGM. It's great to attend those sessions just to be able to hear all the good news about what's happening. Just a question. I did have some members of the DBIA, being our ward councillors, ask about changes to just the procedure around board members voting on the budget as opposed to all the members moving the budget or voting on it. Can you explain if is that so, and what's the rationale for that? Just because it's a change for some members. So thank you for explaining.
Thank you, and through the chair, and I can start answering, and if Michelle wants to add anything. So it is based on a bylaw that was passed by City Council in 2017. So it's been around for a while. So I'm, a little shocked to hear that they're not used to it. So it's based on a bylaw, and the bylaw is based on the municipal act through the province. So it's not it's not a policy that the DBIA board put together. It is a city bylaw that we have to follow. And I believe the rationale when that bylaw came into place is the members are not seeing what board members are seeing. So board members would meet monthly and they would see everything. And then the members really only meet once or twice a year. So it's really hard for them to vote on the budget. That being said, prior to us presenting the budget at the AGM, we did do a member survey, and we did do member interviews for anyone who was interested to comment on the budget.
And thank you. That's great for the public and members to hear that rationale. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cheekin. I have Councillor Vasiliadis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Nor. Can you tell me how many businesses exist within the DBIA boundary?
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm going to say about 620.
620, okay.
Give or take. On the main street, we have about 450, and then at the upper levels. Now that changes depending on closures, openings, expansions, but I would say it's about 620.
Okay, so it's gone up over the years. I remember when it was 400, so that's great. Now, when I look at the proposed 2026 budget, and I'm looking at the settlement expense allocation, I'm looking at events for 2026 to be around 51,000 of that money goes towards events. So out of the 101,000, about 51,000 of that money will go to events. So how are your numbers for events this year? I know you did a lot of events compared to past years, and what I could see, they're very successful. But do you have like numbers or how many people showed up?
Thank you, and through the chair. We have some numbers. It is hard to measure when you're for a sidewalk sale, people can enter through various entries. Actually, we've been leveraging AI whenever we take an overhead shot of like the busiest time, we put it through AI and say how many people showed up, and it does the head count, which is pretty cool to see. I would say for our sidewalk sales, we had about 5,000 people roll through, and we mostly get those numbers directly from businesses. We don't have our annual foot count. But from businesses, they say they had about 2,000 to 3,000 people come through their business and purchase something. And in terms of Halloween, that was easier to calculate how many people because we gave one piece per candy per child. And most businesses reported that they gave out 3,000 to 5,000 pieces of candy. In terms of the movies, we did a drone shot. And there were about 400 per night.
Okay. Yeah. So overall, the business is saying that the events are helping their business.
Absolutely.
That's great. And under the next line, it's capital and other is about 63,000. What does that represent as a part of your budget?
Thank you. And through the chair, so that would represent one staff member that helps with the events and some marketing.
And then, of course, your beautification and vibrancy, and that's a part of it too. So again, that money's needed to run events, help businesses, and so on. Now, I was just looking on the website, and just under goals on the website, it mentioned about being a part of a small business incubator where you partner up with other organizations. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. And through the chair. So we partner with our community partners, the Chamber, the Business Advisory Center through Community Futures, as well as the Innovation Cluster. If we get a client, they get a client, and we help them with, let's say, Community Futures got a client who's looking to open a business. They're looking at the downtown. We get to work together to make sure that they get a nice spot downtown that they like. And we help them through, okay, what is your business plan? We help them all the way through opening and then beyond.
It's great. And I also noticed that it talks about business grants. Is that something that you would help a business if they called you on how to get a grant potentially, or how to go about applying for a grant?
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, yes. So actually next week we're hosting a information session for our members with the Ontario Centre of Innovation because they do have a grant for up to $10,000 for retailers. And we're like, we have a lot of retailers. So can someone from Toronto come down and do an info session? And they said yes. So
that's great. No, thank you for answering the questions. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vassiliadis, and Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks for your attendance today. Couple of things. I found a borough card I bought a couple of years ago. I didn't see an expiry on that. Is it still good?
they don't expire because they're money, and there is a legislation in Canada that does not allow for gift cards to expire.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been a great day for me. I knew I bought the darn thing, but I couldn't find it today. So looks like Mrs. Baldwin's going to get a good present this year. Secondly, I'm wondering with the new skating rink that we've put in place downtown. This is the 66th and last final U11 Lift Lock Atom hockey tournament. We've got about 52 teams at last count coming into Peterborough mid-January. I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity there to somehow connect with the Atom tournament and see if we couldn't do something at the downtown Quaker Square rink as part of the tournament. Not to steal too much thunder, but we are doing an initiative this year called Hockey Bags for Hunger, where all of the teams coming into Peterborough, we're hoping that they'll fill a hockey bag full of non-perishable food items. The tournament committee is going to make a sizable donation to Worth the Food Share. I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity there to work with your members to do something really big.
Yeah. Thank you. And through the chair, absolutely. We do work with our tourism partners here at the city. We're working to make TELUS Cup big and encouraging people to come downtown next year. So I don't see why not. So yeah, once we have information, we're happy to work together.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to pass on some information there. And if there's something we could partner with for that occasion, it'd be great. So thank you very much for being here.
Any other questions of the presenter? Noor, thank you very much.
Thank you
for attending. And Councillor Baldwin, you may want to check the coupons that Councillor Beamer's been giving us, just to make sure that they're good for the stocking too. At this point, it's moved by Councillor Burke. We'll go for a vote, please. And that is carried. What we're going to do now is recess until 6 o'clock, but I'm going to ask council, after they get a bite to eat, if there's interest, we have, excuse me, an open forum about the budget in the main lobby till about 5:45, if you care to attend and go down and chat with people. Thank you very much. We'll see you at 6.